Alberta separatists have 3 months left to garner enough signatures to trigger a referendum, something the Premier says would happen this year if the separatist group can get the required signatures. Do you agree that the province of Alberta should cease to be part of Canada to become an independent state? That would be the question that the Alberta Prosperity Project is putting forward on its petition, and I guess would be the question for the referendum. The wording specifically chosen to reflect the phrasing that is required in the Clarity Act. That's a federal law that was passed after the 1995 Quebec referendum, the law that could potentially serve as Alberta's pathway to separation. Earlier, I spoke to Stéphane Dion. He's the former Liberal leader, and he was also the minister responsible for the Clarity Act. Stéphane Dion, nice to see you again. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Rosemary.
So explain how the Clarity Act would work if Alberta goes through with this referendum.
The Clarity Act is giving effect to the Supreme Court reference.
Yes.
That the Supreme Court said that in order to trigger a negotiation on secession, that means the province we're moving from Canada, you need to negotiate a constitutional modification that would make this province disappearing in the Canadian Constitution. And for that, you need to negotiate in order to protect the rights as much as possible of everyone. And it's a very, very difficult negotiation. In order to trigger this negotiation, the premier of the province will need to show that its population clearly wants to secede. It's not something that it have big. It's a clear will to stop to be Canadian. Would be happier if we were not Canadian. If a population come with this consensus, then you start to negotiate and you try to come to an agreement of separation that will, at the end, become a change in the Constitution of Canada. That's the process. It's a very demanding one because to trigger the breakup of a country is not something trivial. But at the same time, if a population clearly doesn't want to be Canadian, there is a process to make this happening.
Are you surprised to see this growing separatist movement in Alberta?
But for the reason I mentioned just before, Alberta is the place in the world where the regional government has the more power on natural resources and the more natural resources per capita. And then you come with these policies that we need to do in order to decrease our greenhouse gas emissions to save the planet burning and Alberta forest burning, by the way. And this is a shock and a difficulty. I think this difficulty should be solved within Canada without putting the existence of our country on the table. It's a mistake to go towards separation. But of course, there is tensions about what is the proper eco-climatic policies that we should apply in the case of Alberta.
The Alberta separatist movement, I'm sure you've seen this, has been speaking to American officials in some capacity, even talking about getting access to money, a credit line from the U.S. What do you make of Americans being involved in that conversation, Stéphane Dion?
I think it's completely irresponsible to have done that, because we know that President Trump is somebody very difficult to predict what he will do, but he has clearly expressed his view about annexation of territories in order to get the resource of these territories. We need to remember that in Canada is almost alone around the world where the control of natural resources is in the hands of the provinces, of the regional entities, and not the central government or the federal government. In the US, natural resources are federal. That means that if you invite Trump in Alberta, and maybe to take control of Alberta, that means that Albertans, 5 million people, will have to share the dividends of their natural resources with 240 million Americans. It would be a good deal for Trump, but completely bad for Albertans. And it should be said. Nobody's saying that, so I'm saying so. It's completely irresponsible to have done that from the point of view of Albertans and, of course, of all Canadians.
You know, you're from Quebec, obviously, and in your home province, the Parti Québécois has seen a great amount of success in the polls. There'll be an election in the fall. They say if they're reelected, they will also hold a referendum. What do you make of that reality, that it could be happening in two places in the same time?
Or maybe three. There's a petition in Saskatchewan as well. I think it's foolish. If you see the other countries, they have the same disagreements, and it's tough to find solutions, a lot of difficulties, but these other countries, they don't put the existence of the country on the table each time they have a disagreement, only in Canada. And what Canada has done to be considered this way, it's one of the most admired country in the world. I was in Europe in the last 8 years. Everybody's in love with Canada. I think you have more than 1 billion people on this planet dreaming to become Canadian. So why are we in Canada always talking about the possibility to split our country? It's a shame.
What advice would you give to the federal government, Monsieur Dion? As you know, the Prime Minister signed a memorandum of understanding with Alberta to look at the possible creation of a pipeline and to do some other things around energy in that province. That was partly how the Prime Minister wanted to deal with some of this frustration that Albertans are feeling. What would be your advice in terms of how to handle this situation?
I have no patience for separatist blackmail. And when the Premier is involved in separatist blackmail, you should say to the Premier, I will come with a deal with you if it makes sense for Alberta and Canada, but not in order to mollify the separatists of your party. Put your country before your party, please. That would be my reaction. If this agreement makes sense for Canada and Alberta, you do it. But don't do it in order to please the separatists. It never works. And it's a waste of energy. In my province, Quebec, I've seen that so much. People with full of skills and talents, instead of working to improve the situation of Quebec in Canada and Canada as a whole, they are trying to split the country and they are wasting their energy in it. That's very sad for Quebec. I don't think Alberta should emulate that.
Do you think that the Premier, who put in place this ability to hold petitions that would lead to a referendum, Premier Smith did that, do you think that was risky on her part?
Irresponsible, because she needs to be clear. Is she indifferent about the fact that Alberta is in Canada or not? Does she cares? And if she cares, then she should say so. It's completely wrong to split the country. She should say that very clearly. And then why she lowered the bar to have a referendum on it if she's against separation? And imagine that you have a yes vote. I know it's very unlikely that Alberta, most people will vote yes to leave Canada, but assume it's happening. Who will negotiate? The first step that we need to have in Canada about a secession process, it is for the Premier of the province to call a constitutional negotiation in saying, look, I have a clear majority on the clear question. From my people, they want to leave Canada. We need to start the negotiation. The negotiations will be very tough. You will have a lot of difficulties, including territorial, since Aboriginal peoples, especially in the case of Alberta, a strong claim about their territories to stay in Canada. Will it be Premier Smith that will lead these negotiations for Alberta? If she doesn't believe in separation, does it make sense that it would be her that will go in these tough negotiations for something she does not believe in? It's a mess. And she needs to clarify what that means for Albertans and Canadians, the situation she has created herself.
Stéphane Dion, very nice to see you again. Thank you for making time for us.
Thank you so much, Rosemary.